King Charles has just humiliated Queen Camilla in public, asking her to remove Diana's necklace that was once considered missing from the royal palace. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. It was one of the most breathtaking pieces in the royal collection, a necklace so radiant that it seemed to hold its own light. Crafted from diamonds and sapphires, it was said to have been created by one of London's most exclusive jewelers in the early 1980s. When it was first seen around the neck of a young Princess Diana, it instantly became iconic. To the public, it was more than just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of a fairy tale romance that, at the time, appeared destined to endure forever. Charles had chosen it himself, years before the world knew the truth of what their marriage would become. The necklace was meant to represent love and loyalty, a gesture of affection from a husband to his new wife. The moment he presented it to her, Diana was said to have smiled in that gentle, radiant way that only she could, the way that made people feel they were witnessing something pure. She wore it often, especially during their early tours as a couple. It glittered under the African sun during their visit to Kenya, shimmered beneath the chandeliers of Buckingham Palace, and caught the light of camera flashes at countless charity galas. Every time the necklace appeared, it reinforced the image of Diana as the embodiment of grace. The British press adored it, dubbing it the necklace of two hearts. What the public didn't know was that, even then, the necklace carried an unspoken tension. It was Charles's gift, a reminder of his position, his control, his desire to define what his wife should represent. For Diana, it became both a treasure and a burden. As their marriage began to crumble, the jewelry that once symbolized affection became a quiet reminder of pain. Each time Diana looked at the necklace, she was said to feel a sense of distance, not just from her husband, but from the life she had once imagined. Still, she kept it, not out of attachment, but because it had become part of her story. When she wore it during her final official tours, many noticed her expression seemed more restrained, her smile tinged with melancholy. After her passing, the royal family faced a painful decision about what to do with her personal belongings. Some items were passed to her sons, William and Harry. Others were catalogued and sealed in royal vaults, their locations recorded in the family archives. But when it came to that particular necklace, something unusual happened, it was never properly accounted for. Over the years, whispers began to circulate among royal watchers. Some said the piece had been quietly taken out of circulation by the palace, locked away to avoid public controversy. Others believed it had been gifted privately to one of Diana's sons, only to disappear during the complicated legal arrangements that followed her estate settlement. A few even speculated it had been sold, though no record of a transaction ever surfaced. The truth was simpler, and more mysterious. According to insiders who have handled the royal jewelry inventory, the necklace was labeled, temporarily removed for restoration, sometime in the late 1990s. After that, there were no further updates. It was as though the piece had vanished from existence. For the royal family, that was convenient. The less said about Diana's personal treasures, the better. Her legacy had already proven difficult to manage, her image still more beloved than any living royal. Each time her memory resurfaced, comparisons followed. Charles and Camilla worked for decades to reshape their narrative, emphasizing unity, duty, and the quiet dignity of moving forward. Yet beneath the surface, there was always the question of what still lingered from the past. That necklace was a physical reminder of that lingering. It carried a history that refused to die. Camilla, in her own way, understood this. When she became queen consort, she inherited not just the crown's authority but its complications. As the keeper of the royal jewelry collection, she had access to every historical piece, from the tiaras of Queen Mary to the brooches of Queen Elizabeth II. Each jewel came with its own story, and Camilla was known to take a particular interest in the craftsmanship and history behind them. So when the necklace resurfaced in a royal vault earlier this year, it likely didn't seem unusual at first. It had been decades since anyone had mentioned it. Its file was dusty, the record incomplete. Some say it was an aide who suggested it might pair beautifully with Camilla's gown for the upcoming charity banquet. Others claim that Camilla herself requested to see the older collections, curious about the pieces that hadn't been worn in years. When the jewelry box was opened, the necklace was still breathtaking. Its diamonds had lost none of their brilliance, its design timeless. But for anyone who remembered, it was unmistakably Diana's. There are conflicting accounts about what happened next. Some palace staff insist that Camilla had no idea of the necklace's history when she chose it. To her, it was simply another royal heirloom, one of dozens of dazzling pieces that once belonged to a previous generation. Others, however, suggest that she knew exactly what it was, that she had read the archival note identifying it as a personal gift from Charles to Diana. If that was the case, then her decision to wear it that evening was no ordinary fashion choice. It was, intentionally or not, a statement. For decades, Camilla had lived with the shadow of comparison. No matter how dutiful, graceful, or loyal she appeared, she was forever tied to the image of the woman who came before her. Every public appearance invited the same unspoken question: could she ever truly replace Diana in the hearts of the people? Perhaps, then, the necklace represented something symbolic, a way of closing that chapter once and for all. To wear what once belonged to Diana might have felt like reclaiming her place in the story. A subtle declaration that she was no longer living in someone else's shadow, but finally standing as the rightful queen beside her king. But if that was her intention, it would prove to be her most costly misstep. Because for Charles, the necklace was not a symbol of reconciliation, it was a ghost of his past mistakes. Seeing it again, gleaming against Camilla's neck under the lights of the palace hall, was like watching a memory come to life. Those who know Charles describe him as deeply sentimental. Behind his restrained public image lies a man who remembers details: the smell of a garden, the sound of a song, the texture of a gift given long ago. To him, Diana's necklace was not an ornament, it was a fragment of his youth, a reminder of promises made and broken. That night, when he saw it again, something in him seemed to shift. Witnesses say he went unusually quiet. He avoided eye contact, his expression tightening with every passing moment. And when he finally spoke to Camilla, his voice carried a tone that those around them would never forget: not anger, but deep, weary disappointment. The necklace had done more than sparkle. It had unearthed the past. Later, when images from that evening began circulating online, the reactions were immediate. Royal experts quickly identified the piece, cross-referencing old photographs of Diana from the 1980s. Fans flooded social media with side-by-side comparisons, and the outrage was swift. For many, it felt like a violation, as though a sacred memory had been disturbed. But inside the palace, the tension ran even deeper. Senior courtiers reportedly debated whether the queen had breached royal protocol by wearing something so personally tied to the late princess. Others questioned why no one had flagged the item earlier, given its emotional significance. And above all, there was one uncomfortable truth no one dared to voice: that no matter how many years had passed, the monarchy was still haunted by Diana. The necklace, small as it seemed, had reopened the one wound that time could never quite heal. That was the irony of it all, that a single piece of jewelry, once given in love, could hold within it the power to divide a family, stir a nation, and remind a king of the one thing he could never escape: the past. And as the whispers spread through the palace corridors that night, one thing became clear. This was no longer just about the necklace. It was about legacy. About who truly owned the story of Diana: the woman who had once worn it, the man who had given it, and the woman who now carried it into the light once more. It was the necklace of two queens, one beloved by the world, and the other forever struggling to earn her place beside a man who would always be remembered for loving someone else. It would take only one public moment, one impulsive reaction, to turn that symbol of history into the catalyst for humiliation. And that moment, as the world would soon see, was about to arrive. No matter how many years have passed since her death, Princess Diana remains more alive in memory than many who still walk among us. Her presence lingers, not as a fading photograph in the archives of history, but as a living force that continues to shape the monarchy, the media, and the emotions of millions. For King Charles, she is both a source of redemption and a haunting that refuses to rest. And for Queen Camilla, she is the invisible rival she can never quite escape. When Diana first entered royal life, she brought something the institution hadn't seen in generations: vulnerability wrapped in grace. The people saw themselves in her. She laughed too loudly at official events, hugged children others might have ignored, and cried openly when the pressure became too much. To the monarchy, such honesty was unsettling; to the public, it was revolutionary. Overnight, she became the heart of the royal family. Her every move, her fashion, her gestures, even her sorrow, became symbols. But symbols have power, and Diana's power outgrew the palace walls. By the time she separated from Charles, her influence had surpassed even that of the royal household. In the years that followed, the tabloids may have turned her pain into headlines, but the world turned her struggle into legend. Her compassion for the sick, her defiance of royal formality, her resilience through heartbreak, these became the defining images of her legacy. When she died, it wasn't just a princess who was lost, it was a dream of purity and kindness that people believed still existed in the modern world. For Charles, Diana's memory has always been a paradox. He was both the man who loved her and the man blamed for her suffering. When he married Camilla, the woman once cast as the villain of that story, he must have hoped that time and forgiveness would eventually bury the ghosts. Yet time has a strange way of bringing the past back when you least expect it. Every public appearance Charles and Camilla have made since their marriage carries an invisible echo, the unspoken comparison to Diana. When Camilla smiles at the crowd, the cameras flash, but often with captions that recall Diana's warmth. When Charles speaks about duty, journalists recall Diana's humanity. Even when their sons appear at events, people still search for Diana's face in their expressions. The monarchy has done its best to manage this legacy. Documentaries, memorial services, and carefully worded speeches have all tried to frame Diana as a cherished but concluded chapter, a beloved figure whose influence lives on through her children. But the truth is that Diana's presence is not confined to memory. It is an active force, shaping the emotional narrative of everything that happens within the royal family, even decades later. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the way Charles still reacts when her name, or her image, unexpectedly resurfaces. Those close to him say that, even now, he keeps certain mementos of Diana locked away in his private study, old letters, hand-drawn notes from their sons, even framed photographs of her charity work. For him, they serve as a quiet reminder of the past, not of scandal, but of a woman whose life and death changed the monarchy forever. His relationship with Diana was complex, built on affection, resentment, and regret. Yet there remains, deep within him, a thread of guilt that no crown could ever fully erase. When he saw Camilla wearing Diana's necklace that night, that thread must have tightened. It wasn't only the sight of the jewel itself that wounded him, it was what it represented. The necklace wasn't just part of Diana's wardrobe, it was part of her story. It had witnessed moments of joy, of betrayal, of heartbreak. It had touched her skin, shown in her photographs, been admired by millions. For Charles, it was like seeing the past worn as an accessory, stripped of its meaning. Diana's ghost, in that instant, stepped back into the room. But Diana's haunting presence doesn't just manifest in jewels or memories. It lives in the collective consciousness of the people, those who grew up idolizing her and those who continue to defend her legacy online. Every time a story surfaces involving Charles or Camilla, Diana's name trends once again. Her fans, many of whom were not even alive during her lifetime, treat her as a timeless icon of empathy and resistance. The more the monarchy tries to move forward, the more her spirit pulls it backward. For Camilla, this has been a quiet torment. For years, she endured being called names in the press, vilified as the woman who destroyed a fairy tale. The public slowly softened toward her, recognizing her loyalty and calm demeanor, but the comparisons never stopped. She once said privately that she understood she could never replace Diana in people's hearts, that her only task was to support Charles and endure with grace. Yet even endurance has its limits. Some insiders believe that Camilla's choice to wear the necklace, whether intentional or not, may have been rooted in exhaustion. After decades of walking in another woman's shadow, perhaps she wanted, just once, to reclaim a piece of history and make it her own. To take something that symbolized the old pain and transform it into a mark of continuity, not rivalry. But fate doesn't forgive easily, especially in the royal world. What was meant to be a statement of unity turned into a symbol of defiance. And perhaps that is the cruel irony of Diana's legacy. Even in death, she continues to command the narrative. Her name still dictates how people perceive Charles, how they judge Camilla, and how they interpret every story that emerges from the palace. To the public, she remains the standard of compassion. To the monarchy, she remains a reminder of vulnerability's power. Her sons, too, have carried her influence in different ways. Prince William has embraced duty and composure, while Prince Harry has channeled her spirit of rebellion and authenticity. Both, however, speak of her with reverence, a sign that no matter how far they drift from each other, they are still bound by the woman who shaped them. And Charles, in his quieter moments, must see in them the reflection of what could have been, the family that once stood whole before everything fell apart. So when that necklace resurfaced, it didn't just reopen personal wounds, it reopened a national conversation. News outlets revisited old footage, documentaries replayed clips of Diana in her prime, and commentators questioned whether the monarchy could ever truly separate itself from her image. Even global audiences who had long moved on found themselves captivated once again. The story had all the elements of tragedy, love, betrayal, and the inescapable pull of memory. It wasn't just jewelry, it was history breathing again. Diana's legacy has always thrived in those moments when emotion collides with formality, when the human side of royalty becomes visible. That night, as Charles confronted Camilla, the monarchy's carefully maintained facade cracked, if only for a second. Beneath the titles and crowns, the world saw a man haunted by love lost and a woman struggling to escape its shadow. And that is the essence of Diana's ghost. She appears not as a specter in the night, but as an emotion, the ache of empathy, the whisper of conscience, the feeling that love should always come before duty. Even now, decades later, her story continues to hold the monarchy accountable to its humanity. It's no wonder the image of that necklace caused such an uproar. To the public, it wasn't just about Camilla's choice, it was about respect, respect for memory, for loss, for the woman who changed the very definition of what it meant to be royal. In that light, Charles's reaction becomes clearer. He wasn't merely angry. He was overwhelmed by something deeper, the sudden realization that no matter how far he's come, the past is never truly gone. The necklace was proof that time does not bury history, it only hides it, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And now, the ghost of Diana was back, not through scandal or revenge, but through remembrance. Through the way the world still speaks her name. Through the way her story refuses to fade. In life, she had once said she wanted to be a queen of people's hearts. In death, she became exactly that. And for those who live in her shadow, including the king himself, her heart still beats in the silence between every public smile, every careful statement, and every glittering jewel that once belonged to her. Diana's ghost does not haunt the halls of the palace as much as it haunts the minds of those who cannot forget her. And as long as that memory endures, no crown, no ceremony, and no act of will can truly erase her from the story. That night, when Charles looked at the necklace, he saw not diamonds, but reflection, a reminder that the monarchy's greatest challenge is not the future, but the past it cannot escape. And so, as the echoes of that moment rippled through the world, one truth became undeniable. The spirit of Princess Diana had returned once more, not to seek revenge, but to remind everyone watching that love, once real, can never truly die. For years, whispers about Princess Diana's missing jewelry had circulated among royal insiders like the faint echo of a ghost story. Among the most talked about pieces was a stunning sapphire and diamond necklace, believed to have vanished shortly after her passing. It was said to have been one of Diana's personal treasures, a piece not just of beauty but of emotion, one that carried memories of both her triumphs and her heartbreaks. Some claimed it was a gift from Prince Charles during their early years of marriage, while others insisted it had deeper origins, perhaps linked to the Spencer family's private collection. Whatever the truth, it disappeared from public record not long after Diana's funeral, leading many to believe it had been locked away forever or quietly repurposed into another royal piece. For decades, that necklace was considered a myth, a missing relic, swallowed by the vaults of royal secrecy. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The public never saw it again, until recently, when Queen Camilla was spotted wearing what appeared to be the very same design at a formal charity event at Windsor. The cameras caught it under the soft glow of the chandeliers, the sapphire gleaming in a way that seemed hauntingly familiar to anyone who had once admired Diana's elegance. Within hours, images spread across social media, and comparisons were drawn between the necklace Camilla wore and the one that Princess Diana had been photographed wearing decades ago. The resemblance was undeniable, and as the story picked up momentum online, one question dominated the discussion: could Queen Camilla really be wearing the necklace that once belonged to the late Princess of Wales, the same necklace that had been missing from royal inventory for nearly 3 decades? Inside Buckingham Palace, tension quietly brewed. What had begun as a fashion statement was now spiraling into a storm of public outrage and private embarrassment. Royal insiders began whispering that King Charles himself had been blindsided. According to several accounts, Charles had no prior knowledge that Camilla planned to wear the piece that evening. To him, Diana's jewelry was sacred ground, a relic of a past that could never be rewritten. The sight of Camilla publicly displaying it, especially during a televised event, was seen by many as an act of insensitivity, even defiance. Behind closed doors, those close to the royal couple described the atmosphere as icy. Charles, usually reserved and diplomatic in public, was said to have reacted with visible anger when he realized what had happened. Some witnesses claimed that after the event, a quiet but heated exchange took place between the king and the queen in a private drawing room. Others hinted that his fury wasn't only about the necklace, but what it symbolized, the ghost of a love story that had never truly faded, and the painful reminder of how the world still compares